Despite having by far the highest average salary of any league in world football at £3 million per annum, the Premier League has fewer stratospheric earners than a couple of divisions across the globe, most notably La Liga and the Chinese Super League. Initially, I had wanted to rank every footballer on earth who is reported to earn more than £250,000 a week, but there were far too many players, so I decided to go with £200,000 a week and limit it to just the Premier League. If this video proves to be a roaring success, I would have no qualms about making a worldwide version and just bumping it up to £300,000 a week, in order to prevent it from being about an hour long. There are 12 Premier League players and 3 Premier League managers believed to earn in excess of £200,000 a week, which works out at more than £10 million a year, or in other words, enough money to fund the US military for almost 13 minutes. It's worth noting that no footballer is given a £200,000 a week contract without having serious talent. So as with a number of these ranking videos, it's really a case of me ranking them from the least to the most brilliant rather than from worst to best. Here is how I would rank every Premier League player who reportedly earns more than £200,000 a week. 12th, Mesut Ozil. I think this is a pretty straightforward one, as talented as Mesut Ozil may be. Since Ozil hasn't been named in Arsenal's Europa League or Premier League squads this season, he is only eligible to represent the club in under-21 fixtures and friendly games, and a reported £350,000 a week is rather a lot of money for a 32-year-old who is training and playing for the under-21s. To make matters worse, that salary is said to make Ozil the joint best paid player in the entire Premier League, not just one of the 12 highest earners. In a whole year, Ozil is reportedly paid just over £18 million before tax, which is roughly 0.15% of the amount that Jeff Bezos' net worth increased by during a single day in July. Ozil is obviously a fabulously talented footballer, among the most gifted and creative of a generation, but he hasn't been among the best players in the Premier League for at least 3 or 4 years, and now he isn't even in the Arsenal squad. I had no option but to put him in 12th. 11th. David De Gea. You might be interested to know that the 2 lowest ranked players in this entire video also happen to be the 2 highest earners, since David De Gea supposedly ties Mesut Ozil as the best paid player in the league on £350,000 a week. Now, it is easy to see why Manchester United rewarded De Gea with such lucrative contracts in the past. He spent about half a decade as by far and away the club's most important player, and they were having to rebuff interest from the likes of Real Madrid. That hasn't been the case for at least 2.5 years, however, during which time De Gea has become increasingly error-prone and less pivotal to the Red Devils. It was the 2018 World Cup that really seemed to knock De Gea for 6, and since enduring a poor tournament in Russia, he has been dropped by Spain and dubious at times at Old Trafford. Of course, he is still a fine goalkeeper, and his contribution to Manchester United since his arrival has been enormous. But right now, at a time when I'm not even sure he's the best goalkeeper at Old Trafford, De Gea has to take 11th. 10th. Timo Werner. The £47.5 million that Chelsea paid for Timo Werner, having activated the German's release clause, looked like a very reasonable price tag in the modern era. Werner scored 34 goals in 45 games for RB Leipzig last season, still aged only 24, and the Blues faced stiff competition for his signature. Liverpool had been long-term admirers, and whilst it was the price tag of £47.5 million that was said to have been the sticking point for them, Werner's wages may also have been an issue for the thrifty Reds as well. Upon signing for Chelsea, Werner reportedly penned a 5-year deal worth £14 million a year, or £270,000 a week, making him the second highest earner at Stamford Bridge. Werner has made a bright start to life at the Bridge, with 8 goals in 14 games, although his best performances have probably been in Europe. With searing pace and fantastic movement, Werner will always be a menace, but in such a competitive list, for now at least, he has to settle for 10th. 9th. Paul Pogba. It won't surprise you to find Paul Pogba in this video, given that the Frenchman is still the most expensive Premier League signing of all time, 4.5 years on from his return to Old Trafford. Pogba didn't come cheap, setting the club back £89 million, and a reported £290,000 a week pay packet also makes him one of the highest earners in the league. You can debate the talents of Paul Pogba until the cows come home, and of course, there's no doubting that he has all the tools to be one of the best midfielders on the planet on his day. But the fact remains that he hasn't had the impact Manchester United had hoped since his arrival. In truth, the impact that Bruno Fernandes has had in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side is really what a lot of people had expected from Pogba, but he has proved to be much more of an enigma. Outstanding on his day, but far too inconsistent, and unfortunately injury prone over the last 18 months, Pogba comes in 9th. 8th. Thiago Alcantara. I absolutely love Thiago Alcantara, so now seems like as good a time as any to reiterate what I said in the introduction, that everyone in this video is remarkably talented regardless of where I position them. Thiago joined Liverpool last summer for the cut price of just £20 million since he had only a year left on his deal at Bayern Munich. Upon his arrival, the Italian-born Spanish international, who is of Brazilian descent, became the joint highest earner at Anfield, penning a reported £200,000 a week 4-year deal. That's one hell of a contract to offer a 29-year-old. But then again, Thiago is one of those players who should be largely unmoved by the passage of time. An outstanding technician capable of pulling the strings in midfield at ease, Thiago was a smart signing by Liverpool as an alternative to their current midfield options, but I can only put him in 8th, such is the strength of this list. 7th. N'Golo Kante. Chelsea's top earner, on a reported £290,000 a week, N'Golo Kante, is supposedly tied with his compatriot and international teammate Paul Pogba as the third highest earner in English football's top flight. It represents a pretty meteoric rise for the tireless Frenchman, who was still playing in the second tier of French football a little over 6 years ago. Kante is now in his 5th season at Stamford Bridge, would you believe, and I would argue that he has never had such good players around him in midfield at club level than he does this season. Among the hardest working players in world football, Kante injects real energy into Frank Lampard's side, as well as his obvious ability to win the ball back in midfield. 6th. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The second highest earner at Arsenal, unlike the highest, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has earned his wages at the Emirates over the last few years. Since Aubameyang arrived in the Premier League with the Gunners, only Mohamed Salah has scored more goals for an English club in either the league or in all competitions, despite the fact that Aubameyang is playing in an Arsenal team that hasn't finished higher than 5th during his time at the club. Lightning quick and lethal in front of goal, Aubameyang has scored 60 goals for the Gunners in the last 2 seasons, averaging better than a goal every other game across his entire time at the Emirates. Those are phenomenal numbers posted by a phenomenal forward, and it speaks volumes about the talent up next that Aubameyang only marks the halfway stage in this list. 5th. Raheem Sterling. One of 4 players reported to earn exactly the £200,000 a week threshold in order to earn them a spot in this video, Raheem Sterling, has justified both his transfer fee and salary throughout his time at Manchester City, and then some. It's worth reminding ourselves, when we look at what Sterling has already achieved, that, for the next week at least, he is still only 25 years old. Despite that fact, Sterling has already scored 10 plus goals for 7 consecutive seasons, 20 plus goals for 3 successive seasons, and he will almost certainly make that 8 and 4 consecutive seasons respectively this season. The most unduly criticised English footballer for the last decade, both on and off the pitch, I still see people claiming that Sterling is either overrated, only scores tap-ins, or some other such nonsense. In truth, Sterling is the second best player England have at their disposal and comfortably among the best in the Premier League. His fitness is outstanding, he has blistering acceleration, and his movement is among the best in world football. So he kickstarts our top 5. 4th. Sergio Aguero. Staying with Man City for now, who are the only Premier League team with 3 players believed to earn in excess of £200,000 a week, 4th place heralds the arrival of Sergio Aguero. Manchester City's all-time leading goalscorer, a fully fit Sergio Aguero, is still one of the most devastating centre-forwards on the planet. Unfortunately for Pep Guardiola, and for citizens fans in general, Aguero has been sidelined for most of this season and for much of the last 3.5 campaigns. In fact, Aguero has never played more than 34 Premier League games for Man City in a single season, a record which he set during his debut campaign. Nonetheless, when he does play, Aguero tends to leave his mark on a game. Always incredibly prolific, Aguero has become even more complete in terms of his all-round centre-forward play under Pep Guardiola, and he's been a big loss during the early parts of this season. When he plays, no one scores more goals per minute in the entire history of the division, during the Premier League era at least, than Sergio Aguero, so he takes 4th despite his recent setbacks. 3rd. Mohamed Salah. As much as Messi and Ronaldo may have shifted the goalposts when it comes to statistics, particularly in terms of wide players, we ought not become immune to remarkable feats, and Mohamed Salah's record at Anfield is most assuredly remarkable. In 167 Liverpool appearances, Salah has scored 104 goals and made 40 assists, averaging almost a goal contribution every game from the right flank. It's an extraordinary record by a sensational footballer who has been so consistent ever since arriving at Anfield in 2017. Equally capable of curling the ball into the back of the net from 30 yards out and being in the right place at the right time to bag himself a tap-in, Salah has already scored 10 goals in 15 games this season, despite having already had COVID-19. He joins Raheem Sterling and club teammate Thiago Alcantara as one of only 4 Premier League players said to earn £200,000 a week. And the last of the 4 is up next. Second, Harry Kane. There will be those who feel that Mohamed Salah and Harry Kane's rankings ought to be switched, and I can understand that point of view. They're two completely different players who are difficult to compare in any reasonable sense, but compare them I have to for the purposes of this video, and for me, Kane is the marginally superior player. Probably the second best out-and-out centre-forward on the planet. Other than maybe blistering speed and a better injury record, Kane has almost every attribute you could dream of in a centre-forward. Mentally, I don't think there's anyone stronger in the Premier League. In front of goal, there is perhaps no one as deadly in this league, and he's now among the division's leading creators as well. Kane has scored 196 goals in 277 games for Tottenham since the start of his breakout campaign in the 2014-15 season, in addition to scoring 32 goals from 51 caps for England. The only thing holding Kane back is his inability to stay fit throughout the entirety of a campaign, although that can perhaps be attributed to the fact that he is almost never rested at Tottenham due to his importance to the club. First, Kevin De Bruyne. The best player in the Premier League who reportedly earns in excess of £200,000 a week, and the best player in the Premier League full stop as far as I'm concerned, is Kevin De Bruyne. That will come as no great surprise to long-term subscribers to this channel, since that has been my belief for a long time now, although it has become a much less controversial one over the last 18 to 24 months. I don't think there is a better midfield player in world football than Kevin De Bruyne, who is almost unplayable at times. De Bruyne can beat you with pace or skill, his vision and passing are among the finest we've ever seen in the English game, and he's no stranger to popping up with a goal himself. If there is one flaw to De Bruyne's game, it is perhaps that Man City sometimes seem too open if Guardiola plays him as the club's second deepest midfielder, but that is really more of a system failure than an individual one. De Bruyne is said to be Man City's joint highest earner on £230,000 a week, and whilst that is obviously an absolute fortune, when you think that is less than half what Antoine Griezmann and Gareth Bale are on, and less than a quarter of what Neymar earns at PSG, without even getting into some of the Chinese Super League salaries, it's not hard to make a case for De Bruyne actually being a real bargain for Manchester City. So that is it for today's video, but thank you all as ever for watching. Give us a like if you enjoyed today's video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. Oh, and you can also find me on Twitter or Instagram, should you wish to do so, via the username @HITC Sevens on both.